Hey guys, this is Andrew with rockclass101.com, and in this week's ukulele lesson, Steven's going to be teaching you an excerpt of Lacrimosa, which is part of Mozart's Requiem. Now, this is a piece of music that has a fascinating history behind it, but I'm going to let Steven share that story with you. Instead, I want to talk about what it's like playing this piece of music from a fingerstyle perspective, because I've been working on it for my own pleasure for the last couple days, and I've got to say that this is going to be a great piece for the seasoned intermediate to budding advanced player. And part of what makes it great for that level isn't just what our left and right hand is doing, which is quite a lot in this music, but it's also the subtleties. It's the little concepts like the dynamics. Pretty early on in this composition, there is a chord movement that just builds and builds and builds, and as it ascends in pitch, it also ascends in its oomph, its energy, and that's a great area for working on building dynamics, which is something that Steven's going to be talking about in the lesson. So that's just one little example of some more advanced concepts that you can pull from this composition. Now, let's go ahead and take a step back. Let's talk a little bit about this lesson. So in this video, Steven's going to be teaching you how to play the entire arrangement. But if you want to get the tabs to print off and follow along with, that's going to be available at this link right here. Or you can go to the site, rockclass101.com, and do a search for Lacrimosa. Now, also on that page will be the interactive on-screen tab viewer. Now, this is a really cool feature where you can hit play, you can watch the tabs scroll across in real time, you can highlight bars to loop sections, slow it down to any speed you wish. Just a great asset in learning a song like this that much easier. Alright guys, so I'm going to go ahead and hand it off to Steven to teach you how to play this, and then I'll catch you at the end of the lesson.
Hi everyone, and welcome to this lesson on Lacrimosa from Mozart's Requiem. Now, this would be the last music that Mozart would ever write before his death at the age of just 35, and the story surrounding Mozart's final masterpiece is full of myth and mystery, and it's absolutely fascinating. So the story begins back in July 1791 when a mysterious stranger representing some unknown patron turns up at Mozart's door and commissions him to write a requiem, or mass for the dead. Encouraged by his wife Constanza, Mozart agrees to the commission under the condition that he never seeks to find out the identity of this unknown patron that the mysterious stranger was representing. Ooh, intriguing. Now, Mozart was very busy at the time already. He was working on a couple of operas, The Magic Flute being one of them, but he was spooked by the arrival of this mysterious stranger. He was famously superstitious, Mozart, and he was very aware of his own ill health, and he was convinced that he'd been cursed to write his own requiem. His health deteriorated as he threw himself into all this work, and he eventually died on December the 5th of that same year. His wife Constanza desperately needed the remainder of the commission fee just to help pay for some of the spiralling debts that Mozart had left behind. She was worried that this unknown patron wouldn't pay for an incomplete requiem, so she enlisted the help of some other composers to complete the composition, and they did some work on it, but for unknown reasons they gave it back to her incomplete. The task then eventually fell to one of Mozart's brightest students at the time, Franz Xaver Süssmayr, who had worked very closely with Mozart in his final few months. Now, the full Requiem consists of several movements, and it's unclear how much Mozart had actually written at the time of his death, but legend says that the first 8 measures of this Lacrimosa was the last music that Mozart ever composed, with the rest being completed by Süssmayr following the detailed instructions that Mozart had left behind. Now, once finished, Süssmayr then wrote out the entire completed score in his own hand, making it impossible to tell really that it had been written by different people. He then signed it off in Mozart's name, and the full requiem was then handed over to this mysterious stranger. Now, the secret unknown patron behind this whole thing, who commissioned the Requiem in the first place, this turned out to be Count Franz von Walsegg, who had lost his wife in the February of that same year, and he wanted a Requiem Mass for her. Now, von Walsegg was an amateur musician himself, but he had a reputation at the time for passing off other composers' work as his own. It was his intention to make out that he had composed this Requiem himself for his late wife. I know, what a scoundrel. Mozart's wife Constanza was furious. You know, she wanted Mozart to rightly have the credit for this Requiem, but it took 10 years before Mozart was rightly credited as the composer of this piece. So that's it, that's the history lesson over. I hope you found that interesting. I think it's fascinating, that story. But let's start having a look now at how we're going to learn to play this beautiful piece. So this piece, Lacrimosa, is just one part of the full Requiem, and this arrangement just covers the first half of the piece. Now, Mozart composed this piece in 12/8 time. And if you're not a music theorist, that might sound a little bit scary, but it's not too bad at all when we get into it. In fact, when we play this piece, we don't really need to worry too much about the rhythm, because once we get playing it, it's just a kind of constant run of eighth notes from start to finish. So although we don't need to count as we're playing as such, it is good to be aware of the time signature, because it kind of dictates how we play the piece. So 12/8 time just means that we have 12 eighth notes per measure, which we play in groups of 3. So each measure we would have 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Okay, so as you can see there, we've got 4 beats, and each beat being split into 3 eighth notes. So a more accurate way to count each measure in 12/8 time would be 1, 2, 3, 2, 2, 3, 3, 2, 3, 4, 2, 3. So this is an example of compound time, where each beat is split into 3, as opposed to simple time like 4/4 time, which a lot of songs are in, where each beat is just split into 2, like 1 and 2 and 3 and etc. Okay, so if that's all too much for you and you hate all this theory stuff, that's fine, don't worry about it. All we really need to think about when we're playing this piece is that we're going to place an accent on each beat being the first of each group of 3 notes. So when we're playing it, we don't need to count, really, we just need to think of this kind of feel of each beat having an accent. So like 1, da, da, 2, da, da, 3, da, da, 4, da, da. So each beat there having that accent with the subsequent 2 eighth notes after that, just kind of fill in that space. So if we apply that kind of feel to the first 2 measures, that would sound like this. 1, da, da, 2, da, da, 3, da, da, 4, da, da, 1, da, da, 2, da, da, 3, da, da, 4, da, da. Okay, so hopefully that all kind of makes sense. The final point just to mention before we get into it is that this is for low G ukulele. You probably could get away with playing this one high G, but it is going to sound better in low G. Okay, so let's get stuck into learning this beautiful piece. Mozart composed this piece in the key of D minor, which is a perfect key for ukulele already, so this arrangement is just in that original key of D minor. And because it's in 12/8 time, there's quite a lot going on in each measure, so I think we'll maybe just look at one measure at a time before slowing it down, zooming in and playing it through together. So if we get straight into measure 1, that should sound like this. So beat 1 is just this C string at the 2nd fret. This is based on a D minor here, but it's all just single note picks for the first measure. So beat 1, C string at the 2nd with the first finger. And then the next note, we're going to go to the A string at the 4th, which we'll play with the pinky. As we play that note, we can take this first finger off and then just play that single note A string at the 4th, and then slide up for the next note to the 5th fret. Okay, that's the first beat. Then on to beat 2, we're going to go to the E string at the 1st fret. So pinky comes off, back to the first finger there, E string at the 1st, pick that note on beat 2. Then we're going to go to the A string open, and we can take this first finger off as we do that. And then we'll use that first finger now to hammer onto the A string first. And then on to beat 3, we're going to hit the open E. So again, take this first finger off as we play the open E. And then we're going to come to the C string at the 2nd with the 2nd finger, pick that note, and then pull off onto the C string first. So the first finger goes on behind that 2nd finger, ready to receive that pull off. So beat 3, and then into beat 4 we play the open G, and then third finger takes the A string at the third, first finger can go onto the first fret behind, because we're going to do another pull off, third to first, to finish off that measure. So like I mentioned in the intro, just bear in mind when we're playing this that each beat, the start of each beat there, is slightly accented. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so let's have a go at playing that measure through together now. 4, 2, 3. So on to measure 2, that should sound like this. So beat 1, we're playing this D minor chord. We're going to play a double stop here of E string first with the first finger, C string second with the second finger. Play those 2 notes together. And then we're going to play the A string open. If you can keep those on for the next 2 notes, that's ideal. Let them just ring over the next 2 notes. If the 5th fret is too much of a stretch for you, they can come off. But ideally try and keep them on as we play the A string open, followed by the A string 5th with the pinky after that. Okay, so that first beat, if you can get that stretch up there, keeping those on, perfect. If not, just take them off as you put the pinky on, that's fine as well. On to beat 2 then, we're going to play the open E with the open G, so 2 strings together there. Again, that's on the beat, so slightly more accented there. And then after that, we're going to play the A string at the first with the first finger, and then the E string at the third with the third finger. Then on to beat 3, coming back to a D minor chord here, playing that same double stop as beat 1. So pick that on beat 3. Then we're going to open up the E string, so the first finger will come off, but not too far because it's going to hammer back on it in a moment. So play the open E, and then hammer it back on to the first fret where it was. Then we're going to loop the second finger over for beat 4 onto the G string at the second, and then pick that note with the thumb, and then play the open A, followed by the C string first, completing that A chord there for the final part of that measure. So that measure once again. Brilliant. So let's have a go at playing that measure through together now. 4, 2, 3. On to measure 3 now, that should sound like this. Okay, so beat 1 is this full D minor chord now, so we'll play all 4 strings together. You could pick those all together, or you could strum through them, or do like a kind of arpeggio pick through that full chord. Whatever works for you, that's fine on beat 1. And then we're going to play the C string at the first, so keep the second finger on, so that bass note can carry on ringing. Third finger will come off, and the first finger will just jump over to the C string at the first, and then we just pick that single note C string at the first, and then we're going to hammer up to the second fret with that third finger. Okay, so there's first 3 notes there. And then beat 2, we're going to want the C string at the 5th, but we want to play it with the first finger. So when we've played those first 3 notes, we're going to slide the third finger up, second finger on the bass string, that comes off, but keep both these fingers on. That sounds weird, but I'll show you why in a second. So the first finger is currently on the C string at the first, the third finger's on the fret high at the second. We've just played that C string at the second, but if we slide both fingers up, we can take that third finger off and just let the first finger fall into place at the 5th fret, ready for beat 2. Okay. Both fingers slide up together, but if you take that 3rd finger off as they're sliding up, we're left with that 1st finger in place, but we don't lose the sound of that slide. The slide sounds continuous even though we've switched fingers sneakily on the way up there. Okay, so then we're going to play the A string at the 8th, pick that, play that with the pinky, and then pick that note. As we do it, lift the 1st finger off and bring it over to the 5th fret on the A string, ready to receive the pull off there. So pull that pinky off onto the A string 5th with that 1st finger. So those first 2 beats again. Try that again. Once more. Okay, so now we're going to go for this E minor 7 flat 5 chord. So keep that 1st finger on, A string at the 5th, 2nd finger onto the E string 6th, 3rd finger onto the C string 7th. G strings open, play all 4 strings together. Again, strum them, pick them together, arpeggio pick, whatever you want to do. So that's beat 3. Then the next 2 notes, we're just going to pick 2 notes of this chord, C string first, and then the E string. But then I'm going to come down to this A chord now, so slide that whole shape down. As we're doing it, kind of think about where the fingers are going to go. So as we're moving that kind of ladder shape down, think about the 1st finger is going to come over to the C string, ready for the 1st fret. These 2 aren't going to do anything. Pinky's going to land on the A string 4th. So as you're bringing them down, trying to shape your hand where it's going to be. That'll just make this transition a little bit smoother. And then when we get to that position, beat 4, we play those 3 notes together, the C, the E and the A in that position. Okay, so again, that's on the beat, so slight accent as we play that chord. Then the next 2 notes, we're going to play the A string at the 1st, so the 2nd finger will take that. This is quite an awkward shape. When I'm playing this, my kind of elbow comes right out to the side. You can see that when I go from here, my elbow's quite tucked in there as I play that shape. But then when I come down to this one, you can see my kind of wrist swings around and the elbow comes out. Never be afraid of kind of like really using your arm and your shoulder and your elbow to kind of really get your hand comfortable in that shape. I think pieces like this, you know, if you're trying to sort of sit back on your sofa with kind of your arms sort of stuck to the arm of the sofa, it's going to be really awkward for you to sort of get some of these transitions. Really get yourself in position with this and don't be scared of really moving your arm around to get it where you need it. That's a really good way of just sort of holding these shapes in an optimal manner. Okay, so that beat 4 was that A chord, and then 2nd finger takes the A string at the 1st and then pulls off onto the A string open. So that measure through once again. Smash it. So let's have a go at playing that measure through together now. 4, 2, 3. So measure 4 is just a repeat of measure 3, so we'll not look at that one again. When we get into measure 5 now, we're starting this 4 measure piece of sheer genius. This is just a joy to listen to and a joy to play this next 4 measures. We've got this kind of ascending melody line using this really cool chord progression where our melody goes from the low D note down here all the way up to the high A note on the A string. Just an absolutely fantastic set of 4 measures this. I love playing these. So if we look just at measure 5, we've got okay, so beat 1 is this C string at the 2nd fret, which we'll play with the 3rd finger this time. We'll see why in a second. So first note, pick that. Then I'm going to use the 2nd finger to play the G string at the 2nd. So add that one on now. Then go back to that C string 2nd, pick that again. And then on beat 2, we want to hit this A chord. So 2nd finger stays on. but then the first finger will take the C string at the first, third finger comes off just to make it that A chord shape, but we just want the open E as our melody note. So just those three strings together, the G, the C and the E, ignoring the A string. That's beat 2. Then the next two notes we just play the notes of that chord, C string first, then the E string open. Then on beat 3 we're going to hit this D minor chord, so just add those other fingers on, and then again the E string at the first is our melody note, so just those bottom 3 strings together. Then again just the 2 notes of the chord there, C string followed by the E string. And then for beat 4 we're going to go to the C5 chord, so the third finger will take the E string at the third, the other two will come off. We've got the C string open, G string open, again the E string is our melody note, so just up to that point there. And then again play the C string and E string of that chord. So like all these measures, each beat, each kind of chord as we hit it is accented slightly louder, the following 2 notes just a little bit quieter. Brill. So let's have a go at playing that measure through together now. 4, 2, 3. So into measure 6 we're just going to continue this ascending chord progression, so we're going to go from an F to an E to an A minor to a G. Really cool chord changes here. So beat 1 is just this full standard open F chord, so all 4 strings together, that A string open being our melody note, so make sure that comes through as we're playing that. Then just play the C string followed by the E string just as part of the chord that we're holding there. Then on beat 2 we're coming to the dreaded E chord. I mean, if you have alternative ways of playing the E chord, you feel free. You might do that kind of thing where you put all 3 fingers on together, first finger takes the A string. I just tend to do the third finger bar, lift it off, hinged there so that it misses the A string, so we still hear that played with the first finger. Okay, the E chord on a ukulele is famously horrible, so whichever way around you play it, just try and make it work for you. But we're only holding it for this beat, so just try and get that in position as best you can. So beat 2, yep, is that E chord, followed by the same 2 strings of the chord, C string, followed by E string. Then we're going to shift that to an A minor chord, so quite a big change there. Those 2 fingers on, again all 4 strings together, accent that beat. And then again, same 2 strings, C string, followed by E string. Then we're going to go to this G5 chord and play all 4 strings again together there, followed again by the same 2 strings, the C string and then the E string. Super cool little run of chords there. So measure 6 once again. So let's have a go at playing that one through together now. 4, 2, 3. So into measure 7 now, that should sound like this. So we're going to start on beat 1 on this C minor chord, which is just a C string open, E string third with the first finger, and then A string 6th with the pinky. 3 strings together, don't need the G string here, so just the C, the E and the A. That's on beat 1. Then we're just going to re-pick the E string, already being held there, and then the A string as it's being held. So beat 1. And then we kind of have that same picking pattern now all the way up through this measure. We just move these fingers up, progressing this melody line, but the picking pattern's the same. So beat 2, we're going to hit the C7 chord, so the pinky will go up 1 fret to the 7th. First finger can come off because we'll play the E string 6th with the third finger. Same picking pattern, C, E and A, followed by the E and the A. Okay, then up to this F chord, so the pinky will slide up another fret to the 8th, first finger will take the E string 5th, same picking pattern again, then move it up another fret to the 9th, pinky goes up 1 fret, and leave the first finger on the 5th where it was, so a nice easy change here, slide that up 1, and then same picking pattern once again. Okay, so that measure 7 once again. And again, just bear in mind, each chord hit on beat 1, a little bit louder, the following 2 notes, a little bit quieter. So let's have a go at playing that measure through together now. 4, 2, 3. On to measure 8 now. We're going to complete this kind of ascending melody section, and it's going to sound like this. So beat 1 is this G chord, where we're going to do a 3/4 bar across the 7th fret using the first finger, leaving that G string open. Then the pinky will take the A string at the 10th, and again we'll play all 4 strings together there on beat 1. Then we're just going to pick the E string, being held there as part of our chord, and then pick the A string as it's being held as well. Okay, and then beat 2, we're going to go to this B flat 7 chord. So the pinky will just move up another fret as it's been doing, 1 fret at a time, to the 11th fret now. And then the 3rd finger is going to do a bar across the E and C string at the 10th fret. Again, G string open. We won't play the G string here, but just leave it open as we play those 3 notes, the C, the E, and the A on beat 2. And then again, just pick the 2 notes of that chord, the E string, followed by the A string. And then to finish off this ascending sequence, I'm going to do the 12th fret with the pinky now. So slide that up another fret there to the 12th. And then we're going to play the E string at the 10th with the 2nd finger, and the C string at the 9th with the 1st finger to make this D5 chord, and play those 3 strings together, the C, the E and the A on beat 3 there. And then we'll play the C string after that, being held as part of that chord, and then play the E string as it's being held there as well. Okay, and then we're going to come back down to the start of the fretboard here. We're going to come to this A chord. So what I would do is take the 2nd finger off. These 2 fingers though can kind of stay where they are, because that's the shape of our A chord when we get it down to C string first and A string 4th, and then play those 3 strings together, the C, the E and the A, and then add the 2nd finger on to play the G string 2nd and then the C string 1st to finish off that measure. So that measure once again. Okay, so let's have a go at playing that measure through together now. 4, 2, 3. So just before we get into measure 9, I just want to mention how we can apply some dynamics and rubato to those previous 4 measures, just to really enhance our performance when we're playing. So I won't go into detail here, we've covered this in previous lessons, but dynamics is just where we vary the volume of our playing, and rubato is where we apply kind of subtle variations in tempo, either slowing down or speeding up a little bit, again just to add some kind of expression to our playing. So in terms of these 4 measures that we've just played, this kind of ascending chord progression, what we'll do is we'll start quite quiet at the start of measure 5, so that D5 chord that we start on, playing that quite quietly. As we progress through measure 5 and 6 and 7, gradually increasing that volume, building up the volume, adding some drama to that section. Probably keep that increase in volume going into measure 8, but then sort of halfway through measure 8, bring that volume back down again quite quickly, and then probably add some rubato there at the end of measure 8, slowing things down as we bring the volume down, just to kind of mark the end of that section and sort of, create a nice transition then into measure 9. So if we put all that theory into practice now, it should sound something like this. So on to measure 9 now, that should sound like this. Okay, so beat 1 is this A7 chord, and if we think about where we were at the end of measure 8, we were playing this A major chord with the pinky on the A string at the 4th. So to get to this A7 shape, it's quite easy. We keep these 2 fingers on, 1st and 2nd, then this pinky comes off, and we just want to play the E string at the 3rd fret. So you could play that with the 3rd finger, that probably makes sense. For some reason I take this pinky off and then use that pinky to loop it over onto the E string 3rd. So either way, 3rd finger, 4th finger, whatever works best for you, doesn't really matter. So then on beat 1, we're going to play that A7 chord, all 4 strings together. And then the next 2 notes are just notes off that chord, so we pick the C string, followed by the E string, but a little bit quieter for those 2 notes. Then on beat 2, we're going to hit this A string at the 2nd fret, which we're holding already as part of our E7 chord. For the next bit though, we'll take all that off, and then we want to hold the C string at the 2nd fret, so we'll use 2nd finger for that, and then the A string at the 1st, we'll use the 1st finger, and we'll pick those 2 notes together. And then what we'll do is we'll take the 1st finger off, slide this 2nd finger down a fret, so it's at the C string at the 1st fret, and then play that with the open A. Okay, and then on to beat 2, we're going to go to a standard D minor chord and play all 4 strings together. And the next 2 notes are again just notes off this chord, so we pick the C string, followed by the E string, and then we go to, on beat 4, this A string at the 2nd, and play that a little bit louder because again that's on the beat. So then we've got this little cheeky transition here where we need to very quickly get up to the 8th and 5th fret. So this might take a bit of practice, this chord change from the D minor. We want to bring the hand up to the 5th fret, use the 1st finger to bar across the top 3 strings, so a 3/4 bar there across the A, the E and the C, and we want the pinky to land on the A string at the 8th fret. So that's the shape we're going for, and then we want to pick the A string at the 8th and the E string at the 5th. Little double stop there, play those together, and then what we'll do is we'll take the pinky off and play the A string and C string that are being held there at the 5th. Okay, so that change from the D minor up to this higher voicing of the D minor is a tricky change, so I would just practice maybe that change from there. Just keep practicing that change just to get that smooth and quick. Okay, and then maybe practice doing it with the actual notes. You could play that D minor chord. Just keep practicing that little section. Okay, until that's quick and smooth and flows quite nicely. Okay, so let's have a go at playing that measure 9 through together now. 4, 2, 3. So measure 10 should sound like this. Okay, so start of measure 10, beat 1 is this E diminished 7 chord, which is quite a common chord shape, but quite a tricky one if you don't know it, because we're using all 4 fingers there. And again, from where we were at the end of measure 9, this 3/4 bar across the 5th fret. That is quite a tricky chord change to get from there to there quite quickly and smoothly to keep the rhythm going here. So again, this might be a point where you stop and just practice that chord change there to get it nice and quick and nice and smooth. So when you're happy with that, beat 1 is just that E diminished 7 chord, all 4 strings together. And a bit like the previous measure, we then just pick notes off this chord. So we're going to pick the C string, followed by the E string, and then on beat 2, we're going to hit that G string at the 3rd as it's being held there already. And then what we're going to do is pick the A, E and C strings off this chord. So we're still holding this chord shape, pick those 3 strings together. And as we pick them, we'll take these 3 fingers off, the 1st, 2nd and 3rd finger, and the pinky will just slide up to the 7th fret on the A string, and then we just pick that single note to complete that part there. So the first half of this measure, again, just that little bit would be okay. So from there we go into beat 3, this D minor 9 chord. So we'll leave the pinky on the A string at the 7th there, and then we'll use the 1st finger to do a full bar across the 5th fret, and then play that full chord, all 4 strings together on beat 3 there. And then we just pick a couple of notes off that chord. So again, we just pick the C string, followed by the E string. And then on beat 4, we're going to take the pinky off, leave the 1st finger bar on though, because we're going to play the A, E and C string at the 5th fret. And then to complete this measure, we'll go to the G string, to the bass string, and we will add the 2nd finger onto the 6th fret, just pick that single note, and then up to the 7th fret with the 3rd finger to finish off there. So that last half of that measure and then if we put it all together, it would sound like this. Brill. So let's have a go at playing that measure through together now. 4, 2, 3. On to measure 11 now, that should sound like this. Okay, so again, we've got some quite tricky kind of transitions going on in this measure as well. So we're going to start off on this E flat chord, which is an awkward shape to hold. What we're going to do is play the G string open. Then we'll have the C string at the 3rd fret with the 1st finger, but then we need to fret the A and the E string at the 6th fret. Now you could try and use 2 fingers and stretch them out like that, the 3rd and the 4th finger. That would sort of work. What I do is use the pinky just to bar across those 2 strings, and that is quite awkward to do. You do need a bit of strength in your pinky to be able to do that. Awkward little shape, as I say, try it both ways. I mean, that's a stretch, that's not easy. Whichever way you do it, it's not a nice shape to hold. It's only for a short time though, just these 3 notes. And again, transition wise, where are we coming from? We're coming from here. So again, quite tricky even to get into that position. Move the 1st finger down to the C string 3rd, and then pinky on there. So again, practice that one from here. Just keep practicing those chord changes if you need to get them quick. So beat 1 is this E flat chord, so we play all 4 strings together, and then we just work down that chord from the E string. So we pick the E string, then the C string, and then on beat 2 we hit that open G. And then straight after, we need to take these 2 fingers and get the pinky up to the A string 10th, and then at the same time try and get this 1st finger onto the 6th fret, because once we've played the A string 10th, we're going to pull it off to the 6th fret here. So from here, quickly up, and again that change is quite tricky to get that smooth and get it accurate when you're playing this kind of at tempo. So again, just practice, practice, practice. It will seem like it's not happening, it'll seem really difficult, but the more you practice it, eventually those transitions will come and they will sound good. So once we've done that pull off from the 10th to the 6th, we're then going to shoot the hand back down, because we want to hold this B flat 7 suspended 4 shape. and we want to hold that A string at the 6th with the pinky, which has just jumped up to the 10th fret previously. So from that pull off, we need to chuck it back down here. So the pinky now takes the 6th fret, first finger takes the E string at the 4th, second finger takes the C string at the 5th. Then we just play those 3 strings together, no G string here, just those 3 treble notes. And that's on beat 3. So if I play the first half of this measure into that chord I've just played, we would have so as you can see, quite a bit of jumping around there of the fretboard. Just practice, practice, honestly, it will come. So once we've played that B flat 7 suspended 4 chord, we just pick again some notes of that chord. So we pick the C string, followed by the E string, and then we want to just drop that A string down to the 5th fret. So the 3rd finger is kind of ready there to take it. So that plays the A string at the 5th, pinky comes off, and then we're holding this shape now. So that's going to be well, the B flat 7 chord. We're just going to pick those 3 notes, A, E, and C, and then just work down that chord, E string first, then down to the C string to finish off that measure. So once again, that measure 11. Really pretty little measure, but just difficult transitions there. But either way, let's have a go at playing that one through together now. 4, 2, 3. So measure 12 now should sound like this. Okay, so beat 1 is this D minor chord where we're just barring across the 5th fret. If we think about transitions again from the end of measure 11, we were just on this B flat 7 chord. So not too bad a change here, just to go from there, take the first finger and bar it across the 5th there. So we play the A, the E, and the C string, no bass note here. So beat 1 is just those 3 top strings played together. Then we play the C string, followed by the E string. And then on beat 2, we want to hit this G string at the 7th. So keep the bar on, bring the 3rd finger over to the G string at the 7th, pick that note on beat 2 there. And then what we're going to do, leaving this chord on, we're going to take the pinky and add it onto the A string at the 8th, pick that single note. And then we'll bring that down to the 7th fret. As we do that, we can take this chord off. So just slide the pinky down a fret to the 7th, the rest of the fingers come off. As we pick that note, A string 7th, we'll think about getting the fingers into position for the next chord. So the first finger is going to take the C string at the 5th, 3rd finger is going to take the E string at the 6th. And then we play those 3 strings together, the A, the E, and the C, on beat 3. Then we just pick that C string, then we pick the E string, and then we're going to drop the A string down to the 5th fret. So the 2nd finger is ready to go there. That will take the A string at the 5th, pinky comes off, and then we play those 3 strings together, the A, the E, and the C. And then we just pick the E string of that chord, followed by the C string. Okay, so that measure 12 once more. Smashing. So let's have a go at playing that measure through together now. 4, 2, 3. So on to measure 13 now. That's going to sound like this. Okay, so beat 1, we're on another one of these diminished chords. So we'll play this B diminished 7 chord here on beat 1, all 4 strings together. And then we'll just pick the C string, followed by the E string, then onto the G string, all as part of that chord there, just picking those strings of the chord. Then what we'll do is we're going to take the A string up to the 10th fret with the pinky. As we do that, the rest of these fingers can come off. We'll just leave the pinky on and do that single note pick, A string at the 10th, and then move that pinky back down 2 frets to the 8th fret, and then pick that. So just that first half of that measure. And again, that's another tricky transition there, that shift up to the 10th fret. It's quite a long way to go from the 5th. So you might want to practice that shift up there, just so we're hitting that 10th fret and getting that nice clean sharp note, nice and accurate when we hit that note there. So then on beat 3, what we're going to do is play this C suspended 4 chord. So our pinky is on the A string of the 8th, so we're just going to add the 3rd finger to the E string at the 8th, 2nd finger to the C string 7th, play all that with the G open. So all 4 strings together on beat 3 there. And then we'll pick that C string, followed by the E string, and then on beat 4 we're going to turn this into a C chord. So leave the 3rd finger on, pinky comes off, 2nd finger goes over to the A string 7th, 1st finger takes the C string 7th. And then we play those 3 notes together, not the G string, just the 3 notes that we're fretting. Play those on beat 4. Then we'll hit the E string at the 8th, which we're holding here already. And then to finish off this measure, we want the E string at the 6th, but we're going to use a 2nd finger for that, because that will help us build up the next chord at the start of measure 14. So once we've played that E string at the 8th, everything can come off, and we'll just take the 2nd finger there and play the E string 6th to finish off that measure. So that measure 13 once more. Brilliant. So let's have a go at playing that one through together now. 4, 2, 3. On to measure 14 now. That should sound like this. Okay, so beat 1, we're doing another one of these diminished chords now, this time a C sharp diminished 7 up at the 7th fret. So we'll play all 4 strings together, the full chord on beat 1. Then we just play the C string of that chord, then the E string, followed by the G string on beat 2. And then what we're going to do is take most of that chord off, but we'll leave this 3rd finger on the C string at the 7th, but take everything else off, play that C string with the open A, and then we're going to move that 3rd finger down 2 frets to the 5th fret, and then play those same 2 strings together again. Okay, so just that first half of that measure. Smash it in. And then we're going to go and continue this movement. So the 3rd finger is going to continue its way down, and it's going to go to the 2nd fret now. Then we'll add on the rest of the D minor chord and play that full chord, all 4 strings on beat 3. And then play the C string of that chord, then the E string. And then on beat 4, we're going to turn this into an A chord. So we'll leave that 2nd finger on, pick that G string at the 2nd as we take the 3rd finger off and put the 1st finger onto the C string first to make that A chord. Then we pick that C string and then we pick the open E to finish off that measure. So just the 2nd half of that measure. Try that again. Brilliant. So we've put it all together, that measure 14. So let's have a go at playing that measure 14 through together now. 4, 2, 3. So when we looked at measures 5 through to 8, that ascending chord progression, we discussed the idea of using dynamics and rubato just to kind of enhance the performance there. We talked about gradually increasing the volume through those 4 measures and then bringing it back down in volume and slowing things down a bit at the end of that 4 measure section. I would probably apply a similar kind of feel to the previous 4 measures we've just looked at. So measures 11, 12, 13 and 14, I'd probably gradually be increasing the volume as we come up the fretboard in that section, and then towards the end of measure 14 just slowing things down and bringing the volume back down before we go into that final repeat of the intro to finish off the piece. So once we've played measure 14, we're now just going to go back to the intro to finish off this arrangement. So measures 15 and 16 are just identical to measures 1 and 2. Then measure 16. Okay, and when we play this measure 16, I'd probably slow things down as we get towards the end of this measure. This is the end of the piece now, so I'll probably just, as I say, slow it down, and then we're going to finish off with this higher voicing of a D minor chord where we'll play the A, the E and the C at the 5th fret, just to finish off there in measure 17. Now I tend to do that bar with the 3rd finger only because the 3rd finger is closest to the 5th fret, so it makes sense just to do that. But you could just use the 1st finger for that bar. You could even bar across the full 5th fret if you wanted to, but we're just picking the A, the E and the C when we get there. Okay, so as I say, slow down that measure 16 and then finish off with that nice D minor chord. So that's it, that's the whole thing, that's the full arrangement. I hope you have loads of fun learning this one, and I will see you next time.
Alright guys, so this week's ukulele lesson was a ton of fun. This is an incredible piece of music, and one that also reminds me of this incredible movie, Amadeus. If you haven't seen it, I'd highly encourage you to give it a watch. It's a lengthy movie, but it's well worth it. And there's a pivotal scene at the end that uses this composition, and it is just, oof, it is heart-wrenching. So guys, I wanted to give you a friendly reminder that if you wanted to get the tabs to print Keep for Your Records, that was available at this link right here, or you can go to the site rockclass101.com and do a search for Lacrimosa. Now also on that page was the really cool interactive on-screen tab viewer, so you can literally hit play, you can watch that tab scroll across in real time, highlight bars, loop sections, slow it down, all that fun jazz. So guys, again, I hope you enjoyed this lesson, and we'll catch you in the next one. Take care.